And now here's Pastor Brian Bales for your driving pleasure on WAVA.
And hello, everyone, and welcome again and back to the show. We're glad that you are joining us here as we once again talking about making a difference in the world that we live in. And my guest today is going to do just that for us. But before I get a chance to talk to Elizabeth Vermette from Good Shepherd Alliance, I want to remind you a little bit about what Scripture says. Scripture says this in James chapter 1, verse 27, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Now, oftentimes people mention that and they mention orphans and the widows, but when we look at James chapter 1, it isn't just talking about orphans and widows. It's implying and telling us those who find themselves in the situations as well, like orphans and widows. That was the best way to illustrate it there in James' time. And our guest today is the CEO of Good Shepherd Alliance, an organization very specifically focused on helping those who are in situations just like James chapter 1 mentioned. And so I'm glad to have with me on the show today Elizabeth Vermette. You can find out more about her by going to goodshepherdnova.org or just by listening to what we're going to say now. Elizabeth, thanks for being here on the show with me today.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to chat with you again.
Well, it's good to chat with you again. You know, I just talked a little bit about James chapter 1, but before we dive into talking some more about what it means to help, let's talk a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you found yourself eventually being there at Good Shepherd Alliance.
Sure. I have a background of about 20 years in public affairs and fundraising. Worked previously for an organization called Students Against Destructive Decisions. I am a 17-year resident of Loudoun County and actually live about 5 minutes from the Good Shepherd office and store in Ashburn. Mm-hmm. And I like to say it's really one of the best-kept secrets in Loudoun County because of living 5 minutes away and bringing items to the store to donate multiple times a year. I had no idea that the profits from the retail thrift store went back into the mission of Good Shepherd, which was helping homeless women and children primarily in Loudoun County. I didn't think that there was an issue with homeless women and children in Loudoun County, and in fact there is. So I'm excited to say I've been here almost a year and really happy with the work that we're doing and the team that we've assembled and the people that we've been able to help.
You know, I think you mentioned something that's really easy for us to miss, is that even in very affluent areas of the country, which as many people in the Washington metro area know, Loudoun often gets some publicity for being very affluent, mm-hmm. There still is deep need. And in fact, that isn't anything new. Good Shepherd Alliance, as you mentioned, you have a very big mission, but it's accomplished through lots of different things. It's been around for a while. How did it come to be originally? Since 1983, when we think about it, that's 41 years.
We've been around for a really long time. We're actually started by an amazing man, a pastor named Charlie Grant, who was a pillar of the Loudoun County community. He actually died last year and left an amazing legacy in everything that he did, including Good Shepherd. Good Shepherd was just one of the things he did. He actually brought homeless people into his house. That's how Good Shepherd started. Wow. From there, it turned into something called the Loudoun County Emergency Housing Alliance. And then Charlie worked with local developers and community groups to identify properties that homeless people could live in. Mm-hmm. And then over the years, Good Shepherd purchased properties and some were donated to us. And so mm-hmm. now, you know, from Charlie opening up the doors of his house, now we have an emergency shelter and 6 transitional homes for women and children. And we are the only organization in Loudoun County that has that.
You know, you provide a lot of services for a lot of different women who find themselves in a very similar situation. And I think it'd be really easy for people to begin to paint a stereotypical picture about how women find themselves in a need situation to where they have to go to a homeless shelter. Could you sort of talk about some of the walks of life and the circumstances that many women find themselves in, wherein that Good Shepherd Alliance comes alongside and helps them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, I think one great example of that is to just kind of give you a sense for the type of women that we serve. Last summer, we had a summer picnic, and I brought my daughter and a couple of her friends who are smart 17-year-old women. And when it was over, they all looked at me and they said, "But they look so normal."
Yeah.
Right? People don't look the way that you expect them to look because you have this vision of what a homeless person is. And that's not who these women are. They're women who, for the most part, have been in bad relationships, some kind of a bad relationship with the partner in their life, and they don't have good relationships with other people in their families, and they don't have community support. Right? So when things go bad, they have no one to fall upon. They have no one to help them. They have no one to surround them. And so that's what we really try to do at Good Shepherd. And that's one of the reasons we really take to heart and try to work with churches and people of faith, because the one thing that we try to bring to these women that they do not have is community, and we try to do that through communities of faith.
None of us are ever meant to do this alone, but I can imagine how overwhelming it is if you find yourself in a situation where you're going through a difficult scenario like Good Shepherd comes along and helps with, and are isolated and alone. And such is a wonderful thing that you do there at Good Shepherd. And again, listeners, you can find out more about the work that they do there at Good Shepherd by going to goodshepherdnova.org. And when you get there, one of the things that you make it clear that it's one thing to help someone in an emergency. It's another thing to actually help someone from that stage of emergency to the place of self-sufficiency. In fact, you mentioned 6 steps to self-sufficiency. Could you help our listeners help them understand a little bit about what those steps are and how you help people make that step from emergency situation to being in a place where they can once again be self-sufficient?
Sure. So we'd like to say that Good Shepherd is a program for women and children, and the first step is housing, right? So the first step is housing and dealing with people's emergency needs. And we have a shelter, and people can live in the shelter for up to 90 days. If we feel like they're a good fit for the program, and I say that because it's hard, it's difficult, and you have to be willing and able to put in the work, and not everyone is able to do that, right? But if we feel like you've been in the shelter for 90 days, you're doing everything that we've asked you to do, you want to move into the transitional program, we have space for you, then we move people into one of our transitional homes. And that's really step 2, where we focus on personal development and education. So we have volunteers who work with them to do financial counseling so that they can get back on their feet financially. We work with them on health and fitness. We work with them on mental wellness. And then for the moms in the program, we also work with them on parenting. Then step 3 is really looking at job training and development. So if they come in without a job, this is where we're really focused on helping them find a job. If they come in with a job, we look at their skill set and say, okay, what else can we help you do? How can we help you develop professionally so that you're in a position to earn a little bit more money, right? Because remember, these women are always going to be the primary income earners for their families.
Yes. And in any part of Washington metro area, being a single income earner is very challenging, let alone with the additional challenges that they're facing, correct?
Correct. And, if you look at if I'm looking at the careers of the people who, are in our program, we have people who are secretaries, we have people who are cafeteria aides, we have people who are bus drivers. So, we're not talking about people who are making 6 figures in Loudoun County. And then step 4 is housing assistance, where we really work with them to identify, okay, how much money are they realistically going to have when they're out of our program? Where could they potentially go? And this is where we work with other partners like organizations like Tree of Life, which is another amazing organization in Loudoun County. We help them fill out applications so that they can potentially get a voucher from the county so that they could stay in the county. And then step 5 is to work with them to secure housing. Whether that's moving into an apartment of their own, or to be honest with you, a lot of times it's them repairing relationships that they have with family members. We have a lot of people who come to us and then, over the course of a year are able to repair relationships they have with their parents or their grandparents or a sibling, and they're able to take their families and move in with a family member. And then step 6 is really self-sufficiency, where they're, off on their own.
Just quickly, as you said all that, it just took me through a journey in my own mind about all the different important steps to get back to that place that maybe we just take for granted. and when we live in it. When you mention like financial counseling, when you mention mental wellness, there's so many different factors in getting to that place of self-sufficiency. And so thank you for what you do there, Good Shepherd, and it not just being a scenario where it's like, hey, we housed you, we got you another house, you're on your own. Now, you've mentioned in our time already together that you have several transitional housing shelters. When you talk about impact, sort of differentiate them. I think you've done this already a little bit upon need and the types of people where they are in their journey. Is it just, you grow from one house to another, or when you look at it, do different family situations, whether they're single or whether they have kids or whatever it might be, put them in different houses? Explain that a little bit. I wasn't sure I fully grasped it when I took a look at the website, and that's more on me than the website, I'm sure.
Yeah, so good question. So like I said, we do have a shelter. So everyone who comes into our program, with few exceptions, and I'll tell you why, go into the shelter. And then we have a house for single women. We have a house for moms with small children. That's called Mary's House of Hope. And then we have two other transitional houses that are essentially group houses for women and children. And then we have two apartments. So because we have those apartments, we have the flexibility to house entire families. We typically don't put men in the houses, the communal houses with women, but the apartments give us the flexibility to, help men who need it and or help complete family units, being, mother, father, and children.
And that's a good differentiation, too, because certainly it would be easy to think through this. And as we've been talking, to think this is just for women. There's many men as well that you help in this scenario. So when we think about all the differing, all the capacity that you have in the differing places, at any one time, how many people may be in your program that's in the transitional housing, whatever type it might be?
Great question. So, for example, right now we have 33 women and one man, and then 17 of those people are children. If we were at full capacity, right now we're doing some work on houses, we'd be able to house about 50 people in total.
Have you seen any change in the need based upon the economy or any things over the last couple of years that might, sort of us as people who are looking out into the world and the culture say, that makes some sense why this is happening?
I think so. So generally speaking, I would say that the need is much greater in Loudoun County than people think it is, even if you're familiar with the point in time count, like the housing authority will go out and one night look at and see how many people can they identify that are homeless. But we work very closely with Loudoun County schools, and every year they have over 1,100 students that are classified as homeless under the federal definition. Mm-hmm. And we only have, for example, right now, we only have 17 of those children in our houses. So you have the remainder of those children are either living in the shelter in the public shelter in Leesburg, or they are living in cars with their parents, which we have a lot of, or they're kind of couch surfing is what they call it, right? Where you have a bunch of people living in one house, but it's not your address. We've seen, which, kind of tracks, we've seen an explosion in homelessness amongst people between the ages of 18 and 24. I'm told they're going to expect that it's about a 300% increase from last year. I think that tracks a lot with what we've seen with just the state of mental health with people that age since COVID. And then we have seen an increase in our area in the number of immigrants who are coming to us who are homeless. And, that poses an interesting challenge for us because a lot of the people don't have documents, and it's hard for us to background check people who don't have documents. And that's part of what we do for our program.
And thank you again for letting us know that. And listeners, don't go anywhere. We're having this conversation with Elizabeth Vermette of Good Shepherd Alliance of how we can make a difference by partnering with them as they partner to make a difference. This is Drive Home with Brian Bales. We'll be back.
105.1 FM WAVA.
And we're having a conversation here with Elizabeth Vermette from Good Shepherd Alliance. And I'm just so grateful for our time we've already had together talking about this, Elizabeth. And so I want to pick up with something that we were talking about right before the break. Now, one of the unique ways you help those in need there at Good Shepherd Alliance is through Hope's Treasures retail stores. What exactly are those? And talk about how that helps make a difference and impact the crisis that you're called to help there at Good Shepherd Alliance?
Absolutely. So we have 4 thrift stores in Loudoun County, or 3 in Loudoun County and 1 in Fairfax County. We have 1 in Ashburn, 1 in Leesburg, 1 in Sterling, and 1 in Chantilly. Mm-hmm. And the profits from those thrift stores go 100% back into the mission of Good Shepherd, which is not only helping the women and children and families in our shelters, but also helping the community in general. So one thing I'm really proud of is the expansion that we've done of a voucher program where we work with allied organizations who identify people who are in need, and we provide them with vouchers for our stores. So they're able to purchase clothing, household items, bicycles, toys, anything like that we have in our stores. Particularly I'm proud to say that we just partnered with Christian Fellowship Church. We did a VIP night where
I know that church. I'm familiar with that one.
We brought in 20 students and their families, and they had $100 vouchers. It's a party atmosphere. So, the other thing about it, too, if you think about living in the richest county in the country and not having even close to the material things that other people in your class have and how that might make you feel as a person.
There's so many things already get in the way of their education, let alone things like this, right?
Right. And so we create this party atmosphere, if you will. There's music, there's food, and we always have something extra besides the voucher. This time, CFC donated these amazing summer bags for the students. And they're able to just come and pick things out for themselves that they want. I think we had 3 different families where some of your CFC volunteers actually had to drive them home because they got dropped off and they had so much stuff. Somebody had a desk, somebody had this amazing toaster oven, and just bags of clothes, right? So that's one of the things that we're able to provide through the thrift stores.
That's amazing. Now, if someone's listening to this and, whether they live in, close to many of your thrift stores or whether they don't, how could they make an impact? Could their church donate, do a clothing drive? How could something like that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So whether you're local or not, we could certainly do clothing drives or household good drives. We have some staff members who can come and pick things up. Certainly, if you're local, we have the 3 stores in Loudoun and then the store in Chantilly. And then, if you're from a church and you think that your church would be interested in doing something similar to what CFC did in terms of sponsoring a voucher night, we'd love to talk to you because, besides the 1,100 students in Loudoun County schools that are homeless last year, there were almost 20,000 who received free lunch. So there's a real need in the county to help these students. And, as they get older, they kind of get left behind, right? Because it gets more difficult. It's more embarrassing. If they're in elementary school, it's not as embarrassing. But once you hit middle school and high school, that the shame kind of factor of not having money and not having a coat and not having what you need, they don't want to come and ask for it, right? Mm-hmm. So, we're looking for ways to partner with other organizations, particularly churches in the community, to get these people the things that they need.
Mm. And so talking about things that they need, what are some of your greatest needs there right now at Good Shepherd Alliance?
Oh, that's a great question. So we really are at a point where we are gearing up for the winter.
Okay. Which is hard to believe in May, but you got to get prepared for it.
But you got to get prepared for it, right? We are actually partnering with Loudoun Cares, and we're sponsoring something called a Faith Summit on Homelessness, and it's going to be June 5th at Reston Bible Church, and we are looking for leaders in churches across Loudoun County to come to this meeting. We will have speakers from the county who will be able to talk about the numbers and what homelessness looks like in Loudoun County. And the reason this is important is because this winter, the winter of 23, there was a hypothermia center. We're not going to have a hypothermia center in 2024, which means that there'll be at least 30 plus people every night who won't have a place to sleep.
Is that a funding cut from the state government, the local government, or what brought that about? Do you know?
It's not a funding cut per se. I think it's more of a space issue. The space where the hypothermia center is being turned into a mental health center, which is greatly needed in the county. Sure. But we still have this issue with homelessness in the county. And in Fairfax County, for example, the churches all come together and they're able to offset the need by providing space at churches. So our goal is to bring church leaders together and say, here's the problem in Loudoun County. How can we work together to help people this winter.
And so you can find more about that summit if you go to goodshepherdnova.org. Is that correct?
You can find it on our Facebook page, and if people are, if they're church leaders listening or people want to share information with their church leader, they can certainly email me, Vermette at gsnova.org.
Spell that last name for us, would you?
Vermette.
There you go. I had it written down correctly. I was just afraid all of a sudden I'd give it out wrong. So thanks for doing that, Elizabeth. One of the things I love to do in this part of the show when I'm talking about or talking with someone who's working in a ministry that's just making such an unbelievable difference in people's lives is give them the opportunity to tell a story about the real life impact that occurs through Good Shepherd. Has there been someone you've seen, even just in your year time or more so that you know the history there, that have gone from crisis to now being able to live the life that Jesus died for? So,
there are many, but I think three that I will point out is that in my time, and I'll be a year in June, we have had 3 women come to us who are pregnant with small children, and telling us that their partner said if they didn't have an abortion, they would leave. And these women decided to pick the lives of all of their children, not just, it's going to make me cry, not just one of their children, how heroic that is. To say, I'm not going to value one life over the other, knowing that they didn't have the capacity to care for those children, right? And so they've ended up with us, and all 3 of them lived with us for a period of time, and they have all had their babies, and they have all moved on. 2 of them have apartments, and someone else moved in with a family member. Oh, and that's something that's a wonderful story. Particularly proud of that.
Yeah. Before I let you go today, if you were talking to someone and they happened to engage someone where they discovered that they were living out of their car or a horrible scenario and they felt like they didn't have anywhere to go, what would you encourage our listeners to say to them, maybe direct them, help them in those sort of ways?
So I think the best thing that I would say is that, you could direct them you could either go to the Good Shepherd website yourself and get our contact information or direct them to our website. They can call in, leave a message, send an email, and one of our case managers will get back to them. If we are not able to help them, we always provide them with resources to other organizations in the county, public and private, who can help. So whether that's the shelter, whether it's Tree of Life, whether it's Mobile Help, whether it's Upside Down Moments, or even Better Life. Like there are many organizations, or Mosaic. There are many organizations in Loudoun County that can help them.
You mentioned several of them that I've had on the radio over the time. We've had Mosaic and Better Life, both. We've talked to Nikki over there at Mosaic, and I just went blank there at Better Life. Elizabeth Ford. There you go. Took me a second. Yeah, both wonderful organizations. And it's a reminder that no one organization, and by the way, no one church can do it by themselves. That we are better together and that we're meant to make an impact in that way. And so, again, just thank you for your time again today, Elizabeth. Before we get off the air here with you, is there anything else you'd just like to say to encourage, ask, or inspire?
I would just say, if you're a person of faith and you're looking to get involved, please reach out to us. I have found in the year that I've worked here that, it's put me on a different journey that I thought that I would be on with my faith. But I know that the people that we're trying to help, they are not going to be able to succeed if we don't surround them with the love of God and Jesus. And we can't do that alone.
Such a wonderful reminder about how we can all play a part. And so, folks, I do encourage you that you've listened to the message of Elizabeth today and be challenged by the difference that they're making, but also not to just assume it's only them that can make a difference. God can use you, whether that is by going to goodshepherdnova.org, making a donation financially. Maybe you want to find out about some of the different stores that they have throughout the Loudoun County and then Western Fairfax area there in Chantilly. Just donate some extra clothes. Hey, we all have some extra clothes. Maybe they're clothes your kids have grown out of. Maybe they're clothes you've grown out of because, hey, some of us eat a little bit more food than we should. Whatever it might be, go make a donation, make a difference. And then certainly the reminder to pray for each other. Pray for those in need. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after the orphans and widows and their desires, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Elizabeth, again, thanks for being here with on the show. And listeners, I do encourage you, if there's something that you've heard here today that has challenged you, go to the website, goodshepherdnova.org, find out more and get involved. And of course, if you'd like to send a comment here to us to WAVA about something you've heard today, you can send an email to comment@wava.org, or you can even call me right there, Christian Fellowship Church in Ashburn, Virginia at 703-729-3900. Thanks for being with us today, Elizabeth. And listener, be encouraged and be challenged, and go and let the gospel make a way. We'll be right back after the break.